Let's continue to talk about BRICS this morning, though. And what is it really about what is going to happen with the de-dollarisation? Try and say that fast a few times this time in the morning. The de-dollarisation. It basically means the use of domestic currencies for international trade to reduce the reliance on the greenback, on the dollar. That's been bandied around for some time now as well. Remember, we buy oil in the dollar as well. In fact, a lot of it runs through the dollar. Is it time to move away from that? Well, let's get the thoughts then of Ndzalama Mathebula, UJ Department of Politics and International Relations, on the de-dollarisation. I'm never going to get that right. I feel like I'm stumbling over it. Morning, Ndzalama. There's a lot to talk about, but can we talk, first of all, currencies? I mean, does this make sense? If you look at someone like you who looks at IR, looks at politics, is this seen to be in the realm of reality?
So good morning, Gareth. Thank you for having me on the show. So firstly, I do believe that it would need a lot of dialogue for us to actually come to a conclusion whereby we'll have a BRICS reserve currency, because we need to understand as to what it will back it up, what commodities will be basketed in the whole currency. But at the same time, I do believe that the feasibility of dissolving the dominance of the dollar comes with using local currencies in order for us to facilitate trade amongst those emerging markets. So, yeah, it is doable considering the global changing order, because we would need to first test it out. But at the same time, it would need a lot of dialogue in order for us to understand as to how it will be implemented.
From an international perspective, I don't want to go into the economic side of this necessarily right now, because as you say, dialogue is needed. I do wonder what the common currency would be, but perhaps we'll grab an economist for that. On the international relations side, would it be fair, would you agree with me that of the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and us, of course, when it comes to the discussion around a de-dollarisation, when it comes around to a discussion of the BRICS Bank, we're pretty low ranking on the BRICS ladder, aren't we? How much influence do you think we really have?
Most definitely, and I do believe that those are one of the dangers as to as much as we are circumventing and trying to counter this U.S. hegemony, are we not getting ourselves into an Asian hegemony whereby South Africa and many of the African states will remain subordinates to the global currencies and superpowers? So I do believe that South Africa would be low ranked considering our GDP, but at the same time, as I said, that it would need a lot of dialogue. But I do believe that it would be more feasible for us to use local currencies as compared to having this common currency, because that would also be a surrender of sovereignty, and it would disrupt so much of our economic markets in the country, in individual countries.
When you now look at how this is going to play politically, Ndzalama, as well, because right now we still have a very unique political landscape. The head of state is obviously also the head of the ANC. How is this going to get played out domestically, do you think? Because right now, best foot forward as far as the presidency is concerned. How does the ANC, in your mind, politically use this to go forward? Because agreements have been signed on electricity, which we know in an election cycle is probably going to get used for political gain, isn't it?
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. And I do believe that we should consider so much of the 2024 election, because as much as we might sign on agreements right now, but then the final determinants is on the people that will be in power next year. And with the possibility of a coalition, I do believe that it would have so much fragmentation, and it would need some consensus amongst political parties that we have within the country. But domestically, considering South Africa, I do not believe that they would have the capacity to actually enact on this BRICS currency that is being talked about.
I'm starting to get a sense as well, listening to some of the criticism around the BRICS Summit. And while it is all going off quite swimmingly, it's going off quite smoothly, it's the international media looking at how we're handling this. But do you get a sense that what South Africa is doing as a country is sitting back, waiting for the other four countries to fix our problems? One of those is these agreements with 8 Chinese companies signed by the electricity minister. Once again, the accusation, the criticism is we're waiting for China to fix our problems. We're waiting for India to fix our problems. We're waiting for Russia to fix our problems in South Africa. Is that a fair criticism?
I would argue this is multifactored. Okay, on one hand, it is fair, but on the other, we can say that there are many ways to look at it. So firstly, I do believe that African states generally, they've always resonated to this very subordinate position within the international community itself. So then in asserting our views, it becomes very much challenging. But at the same time, I do believe that it is a fair criticism because considering the tenets of realism and how states should conduct themselves within the space of international relations, they should aggressively use what they have at their disposal, what deems them attractive in order for them to see through their national interests. So most definitely it is fair considering the impact it will have, because South Africa can never see through its development if it's always going to be determined by other states that are developed. So South Africa and Africa as a whole would need to develop and be key players in shaping the dialogue instead of inheriting it. As much as we talk about the Western hegemony, we should avoid such, circumvent such going forward by being key players. So most definitely South Africa and the rest of Africa should actually play a key role instead of us getting handed down with models of development.
Yeah, I like that. Play a key role instead of inheriting what the other countries are doing. And Ndzalama, I want to ask you this as a last question. You led me very nicely to it. On the issue of expansion, yes, there's more than 20 countries that have applied. Others have shown an interest. What I'm more interested in is for South Africa's position in BRICS. It's unique at the moment because we're the only country on the African continent. We're the gatekeepers at the moment as far as BRICS is concerned in Africa. If Algeria, Nigeria, Egypt were to be brought into BRICS, those countries simply have more to offer than we do as a country. Would we not be pushing ourselves further down the ranking and, to your point, perhaps not be the key player in Africa anymore? Is that a danger, do you think?
No, I do not believe it is a danger. Why is that? Because I do believe that every time when such things happen or when such a dialogue emerges, we are then given a chance to actually realign and revise our ambitions and how we're going to conduct them and implement them in terms of foreign policy. So I do believe that more than anything, it's high time for South Africa to consider its position firstly in the BRICS bloc and in the international community in order for us to pen out this beautiful framework that we can use to accelerate South Africa's growth. So it does actually give us a chance to realign, reassess, and ensure that we enhance our position in many ways. As I said, that we should aggressively use what we have, what deems us attractive as a country in order for us to see through our national interests and fix our foreign policy if we have to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a wonderful way of looking at it as well. There's an ideal that we're aiming for. The question is, what is that expansion framework, the fundamentals of allowing more countries in? What do they bring? What do we get away when involving them as well? Ndzalama, thank you very much indeed for your time. Lovely conversation. I'm sure we'll speak to her again. Ndzalama Mathebula is from the Department of Politics and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg.